2006's Black was a shooter ahead of its time, a shooter that is still fun today. Well, it took till 2011 to finally get a spiritual sequel. Alright, he can shoot me through a wall. Cool, and it flopped horribly. So, what happened? And why is this game so bad? Hey everyone, as always Jarek here. I mostly want to focus on why this game is so bad. I mostly want to dissect the game itself. There are videos discussing in depth the troubled development of Bodycount, and trust me, it was very troubled. Racervic made a great video on it, so if you want to check that one out, check the link up there. I think that's how you pronounce his channel, don't yell at me if that's wrong. And also, I already made a video on Black, so if you want to know more about that game, I would still highly recommend you play that game. It's still great today. Again, check up there and watch that video. Now, I originally wasn't going to cover this game this week. I have put it off for a very long time. Well, I got a little curious and started digging through my old games, came across a very dusty box of Bodycount, and figured, well, gotta bite the bullet someday. Now, despite the fact that 360 sits behind me in every single video, I've not played it for a long time. In fact, when I opened the 360, the game that was sitting in that console was Darkwatch. I released a video on Darkwatch on July 30th, 2019. That means I probably played the game about 4 or 5 days before I made that video, so the last time I used my 360 was exactly 2 years ago. So my favorite Battlefield games is like, oh shit, I haven't seen that in so long. I forgot that I have to replace batteries still. I can't get the batteries out. This will be important when I start talking about the graphics, so just keep that nugget of information in your brain. This game never came out on PC. But before I start talking about the graphics, I need to thank today's sponsor. Hey, my favorite sponsor, Skillshare, is back. Skillshare is an online learning community for people who like to be creative, where millions come together to learn how to improve their creative expression. Skillshare has thousands of classes for people who are creative and curious. There's topics on illustration, design, photography, videos, freelancing, and many more. So Skillshare is for the curious person that wants to learn more. If you're anything like me, you have a hobby you've been putting off getting into for a long time, and Skillshare can help with that. Skillshare has plenty of classes for all skill levels that will fit your schedule. Most are under 60 minutes, and members get unlimited access to the site. The class I'm going to be sharing with you today is iPhone filmmaking. Create a cinematic video with your phone, from Caleb Babcock and Niles Gray. Now, people seemingly always want to know, what microphone are you using? What camera are you using? What should I buy to get into making videos? And I always tell them, don't overcommit. I'm not an iOS guy, I prefer Android, but the point here is that you can make good videos with just your phone. And you already have a phone. As you learn how to make videos, you are going to pick up more things that you might need. It's just an evolution of learning. That's part of the process. Don't go overboard and buy everything right away. That's why I want to suggest this course. It teaches you how to use your phone so you can kind of figure this out. So if you want to try out Skillshare for yourself, check that link down below in the video information. The first 1,000 people that click that link will get a free 1-month free trial of premium membership. As always, a big thanks goes to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. I love what they do. Bodycount's graphics are not particularly good looking. Now, to be fair, most of this is just because it's a late 360 era game. Oh boy, here we are, 360 graphics. Look at all those jaggies. Yeah, this game struggles with all the problems a 360 game would struggle with in 2011. No anti-aliasing, leaving jaggies all over the place, an incredibly poor FOV of probably around 55, sub 720p resolution, and a frame rate that just does not stay stable. It's not entirely fair to blame this game for those problems. Again, it was just because the 360 lasted far too long. And again, you can't really even blame the 360 for that, considering the 2008 recession was happening right in the middle of the 360's lifespan. With that all said, it really doesn't help this game hold up. I think the late 360, late PS3 era is probably the most rough era to go back to if you're trying to play old games. At least with generations before that, I can emulate them and just get the advancements I want. That's not really an option with a 360 or PS3 game. But even if you ignore all these issues, Bodycount is not a particularly good looking game. There are worse, that is true, but for the most part, it just doesn't look very good. The biggest problem with this is the general direction of the game aesthetically. The entirety of this game either takes place in an African slum, which is very brown and muddy looking, a high-tech area that looks more like Tron with way too much bloom in the same boring hallways copy and pasted time and time again, or briefly in Asian fishing villages. These Asian villages probably look the best of the entire game, but oftentimes there's so much clutter going on that it makes it near impossible to actually see where the enemies are. And I don't mean dust and particle effects, I just mean questionable design choices. Too much brown, too much red. The hit indicator sometimes tells me people are shooting at me from behind when they're shooting at me from in front. Where are the enemies? To add on top of this causes a huge issue with the tone of this game. If there was just an African slum or just fishing villages, it would be perfectly fine. But the inclusion of high-tech sci-fi areas really sticks out and does not mesh with the rest of the game. To make things even worse, every time you kill an enemy, big blue orbs pop out, and it's just visually jarring. There is no way to play this game and forget you were playing a game. Everything about it stands out as this arcadey first-person shooter. The tone couldn't be any further removed from the original Black. Now compare this to Black's graphics and it's even more pathetic. Black came out in 2006 for the PS2. The PS2 was very outdated at that point, but damn did they squeeze everything they could out of it with Black. It ran smooth, it constantly had particle effects and explosions happening everywhere. This was easily the best looking PS2 game by far. And even if you were moving to next gen, it was still passable. I cannot come close to saying the same about Bodycount. And that's a perfect segue to the story. Because while the story in the original Black was not good, it did set the mood very well for the whole game. Black was a modern military shooter that wanted you to take it seriously. Not seriously in the gameplay way because there were explosions and bullets flying everywhere all the time, but more in a serious Hollywood movie type of way. The cutscenes and voice acting had a serious tone behind them. Even if you didn't care about the story, you still got the point that something intense was supposed to be going on. And the environments never took you out of that. They looked like real, believable places. Bodycount does not do this. There are 2 main characters in the entire game. 2! And one of them is just some chick talking into your earpiece. You only hear her voice. I don't even think they even said her name. You never get to have any sort of development with her. She just is there to tell you the next objective. And you would think that the second main character would be the main character, the protagonist, the character you were playing as. But nope, he never speaks, he has no input. The second main character is actually the antagonist, who is the cliche badass woman that never has any real motives other than just kill you. This is a problem for a lot of different reasons. Your main character works for the network. You know, the network? No, it never explains it to you. I don't know what the hell the network is. The only characters you see doing anything for the network is your main character and this woman that's talking in your earpiece. That's it. Meanwhile, the antagonist works for quote-unquote the target. I don't know what their motives are. I don't know what they're trying to do. I don't know why they're evil. All I know is they're evil and I should stop them because they got high-tech stuff. So I guess they're evil. That's all I can pull out of that. Like seriously, what does the antagonist want to do? What is her plan? Why is she a threat? There is literally no story in this game, to the point of where I can show you the end of the game and not spoil anything because there's nothing to spoil. In fact, I will do that. It's just a 3-stage boss, and that's just the game. Cool.
You have the skills to deal with the world's most complex problems. We selected you to make a difference. We selected you to join the network. We believe the world needs solutions. We believe the solution is you. You are the network. The network is you. Welcome to the network.
Okay. That told me nothing. The fuck is the network? Yep, even at the end of the game, you still don't know who you work for. Like I said, Black doesn't exactly have a good story, but it has one. And the presentation at least sets the tone for the game. Again, I cannot say this about Bodycount, and so we move to the gameplay. Now, if a game has bad graphics and a bad story, I can forgive it if the gameplay is really good. Bodycount doesn't do that either. I distinctly remember first playing this game back in the day and thinking that it wasn't so bad, not really understanding why everyone hated it. Then I played it more, and I understood. Some of the levels in this game are okay. They're passable. They never reach the height that Black does, but they can occasionally be fun. I can see the inspiration Black had on this game. When everything is clicking right, there's explosions happening all over the place, people are dying left and right, loud gunfire, and again, it's decent. But unfortunately, that clip is body count at its best. And body count at its best is still worse than black when it's just okay.
Carver, you still there?
I think a good place to start would be the guns, because black was always self-advertised as being gun porn. Yeah, it didn't exactly get everything right about the guns, but the execution of the guns in-game did make it pretty satisfying. Bodycount kind of tried to follow this, but didn't do a very good job. The best sounding gun in the game is probably the shotgun, but compare the Bodycount shotgun to the black shotgun, and you'll see how much better black was. The only thing I can say the body count does better than black is at least it doesn't have some weird abominations of weapons. It doesn't have this weird G36 with a side cocking handle on it that doesn't actually exist. It doesn't have an airsoft grenade launcher model. Actually, it just doesn't have a grenade launcher, so scratch that. In fact, the weapon roster is not really very big. And even though I just said it doesn't have the weird inaccuracies that black does, it has some weird choices too. The one that really stood out to me is what this game considers a hand cannon. This, at first glance, just seems like an M9. However, according to the game, it fires 45, however, seems to have the impact of a 50 AE. For all gameplay purposes, this is your hand cannon that will one-shot enemies. But what that gun actually is in real life is a Beretta 87 Target, a 22 caliber pistol. So it being a 45 still doesn't make sense, because at first you would assume an M9 would be 9mm, which, you know, it should be in all reality, but it's not in this game. It's a 45 apparently, but it's not even a 9mm, it's a 22, and this is your game's hand cannon. I can understand wanting to choose a different gun, something more unique than just a Desert Eagle or a generic revolver, but at least choose something like an auto mag instead of saying, this 22 has a bunch of shit put on top of it, it looks like a hand cannon, so it'll do. One of the odd quirks about the guns in body count is how you aim. In body count, when you aim, you don't aim down sights, you just aim a little bit down the gun. Now, this is fine depending on the game. In a game like Fear, this works incredibly well because the game is fast-paced. It lets you see what's going on screen and aim quicker. Now, I know what you're saying. The original Black did not have aim down sights, however, the original Black came out in 2006. Aim down sights weren't really the standard yet. Had Black come out a few years later, it definitely would have had aim down sights. It's not really that fast of a game, it didn't necessitate not having them, and I think it would have looked better if it did have them. In body count, it seems that there's no aim down sights purely because Black didn't have aim down sights, despite the fact that Body Count came out in 2011 and is not a fast-paced game. Keep in mind, both Black and Body Count try to pride themselves in being gun porn. If you want your game to be gun porn and it's not a fast-paced game, it probably should have aim down sights. Black can be excused from this because it wasn't a standard thing back then, but there's not really an excuse for that in 2011. And considering the fact that this game has such a narrow FOV with large weapon models, Not having aim down sights actually gets in the way more, because your gun takes up most of the screen while you're aiming. Speaking of aiming, this flows nicely into the controls. They're awful. The button mapping is mostly fine. However, actually aiming at anything in this game is incredibly awkward. The aiming is very stiff. When you push on the analog stick, it feels like it's going full speed or not at all. This results in an over-reliance on the game's aim assist, but that still feels very clunky. To make things even worse, the aim down sight sensitivity is way too slow. Now, usually with a console game or with a controller in any game, aim down sight speed would be about 50%, and as you're zooming in, it would gradually slow down. In Bodycount, it feels more like it's 30% of the speed, and it suddenly stops and slows down. Needless to say, it's awkward and doesn't feel right. The original Black didn't have this issue. There was a lack of sensitivity settings, but once you got used to it, it felt perfectly fine. In Bodycount, I played through the entire game and still wasn't used to the controls. I'm not sure how they messed up controller aiming in 2011, we had plenty of years to perfect it at that point. There's also some other bizarre things that happen in this game that just make the game feel clunkier than it should. For example, there is a huge delay between when you swap weapons and when you can reload. Alright, I gotta reload my shotgun. I'm gonna mash the reload button the whole time after I swap weapons, and this is how long it takes before I can actually do it. Like, why is there that much of a delay? There's the same delay after you knife someone, and I have no clue why it's here. And then you get into how you actually aim. This is one of those games that allows you to lean, but the thing is, leaning is if you hold down entirely. Like, I can only lean. I'm holding the left trigger down entirely, and I can only lean. If I press the left trigger a little bit, then I can move. I've always wanted it to be the other way around, because when you're in the middle of battle, you're just gonna, like, mash the trigger and try to shoot. But if you're actually trying to lean, then you'll press it a little bit and be more, you know, add some more finesse to it, right? I like the concept, but the execution is terrible. Controls all around just feel bad. Anyway, there's not actually much to talk about when it comes to the format of the gameplay. It mostly just is spawn in on a map, get an objective, run over to the objective, hold X or press X on said objective, run back to where you came from. Meanwhile, in the process of doing this, shoot everything that gets in your way. Or if you're sick of playing the game, just run by the enemies because you don't actually need to shoot them, you just need to get to the objective. Said enemies are also dog shit stupid. These enemies will do one of two things. They'll stand in place, usually by an explosive barrel, and shoot at you, or they'll run straight at you and shoot at you with no self-preservation. That second thing can be a big problem because later on the game gets stupidly difficult for no reason at times. Remember when I said the first half of this game seemed okay? Well, the reason the second half of this game is not so okay is because A, there are random difficulty spikes all over the place, and B, they repeat a lot of levels. This game starts feeling incredibly boring, monotonous, and repetitive very quick. It took me just shy of 5 hours to beat the game, but that was also while I was streaming and distracted with my chat and taking breaks every once in a while. If you look up a long play, the game is closer to 3.5 to 4 hours. And yet, despite that short length, they still have you go back through the same levels you had already played, but backwards. And the one they have you play through the most, 4 times in total, is this incredibly boring, high-tech, glowy hallway. To make this even worse, these enemies are the most annoying in the entire game. This seems familiar. So not only is the high-tech part of this game very, very jarring, but the enemies that have this high-tech are the worst to fight. They have better high-tech armor than the enemies you usually fight against, so of course this just means take the enemy you have already fought, make them bullet sponges, don't have them flinch, and just have them shoot right back at you through your bullets. But we're not done yet, we're getting closer to the end of the game, so we gotta make the game more difficult. How do we do that? Well, we just keep spawning enemies all around the player, giving him absolutely no cover, and just let them kill him over and over. Oh, but they made it worse, especially due to these dickheads. Said dickheads have one of the high-tech sci-fi weapons. This weapon in-game is classified as a shotgun for some reason. It's not a shotgun. This is an electric grenade launcher that will make your screen shake constantly, and they spam these at you. So you have these dickheads at range constantly trying to shoot at you, your screen is shaking all over the place, you have enemies running at you, and you can't really shoot them because your screen won't stop shaking. That is assuming those don't just straight outright kill you to begin with. What in the world is shooting at me? Someone who's invincible, apparently. Bruh. Thank you. What the? What is shooting at me? What the fuck is going on? Now, this game isn't entirely difficult. For the most part, it's pretty easy. It's just there are random difficulty spikes for seemingly no reason. And the difficulty spikes are all artificial difficulty spikes. None of this feels like a challenge, it just feels like bullshit. I can deal with a boring repetitive game. I've had to play those so many times for this channel. But a boring repetitive game that is way too difficult randomly for no reason is what actually gets me. Thankfully, the game does give you a few things to try to balance it out. It doesn't, but it's better than nothing. For starters, I do like the grenades. If you press the grenade button, you throw it in a big arc like you would expect. You can also cook the grenade and, it's a grenade. Effective, does what it's supposed to. However, if you double tap the grenade throw button, instead you'll throw contact grenades more in a line drive. I've actually never seen a game do this before, and I'm surprised more games haven't done this. Like, I love this. This gives you a lot of utility out of your grenades, and I just have a soft spot for contact grenades, probably because I play too much Fear. The next thing this game does to try to make it a little less obnoxious has to do with those big blue orbs popping out everywhere. First off, I just really have to reiterate, these things make the game look so ugly, it's jarring, and it's just too arcadey for the tone they're trying to set. I don't know why they thought this was a good idea. But secondly, these blue orbs are actually quote-unquote intel. Sure. Anyway, they fill up this bar on your bottom left screen. This will give you access to 4 different abilities. The first one is Adrenaline. This basically means you don't take damage and you move faster. It's pretty useful for getting out of situations you don't want to be in. You can activate this at any time, it'll just slowly drain the bar. The second one gives you access to Incendiary rounds, which also give you a bottomless mag. This is very useful for getting rid of heavies, and that's about all I used it for. But there are 2 that are very important that require the entire bar to be full. The first one is actually not very important, I lie to you. It's an airstrike that I never use because a lot of these missions are inside anyway. In fact, the only time I used this was during a mission that forced me to use it. During this mission, the antagonist, big bitch lady, I forget her name, I don't really care, she suddenly shows up. She is too strong for you to kill her, but there's also things in the area you need to blow up. Shooting her a bunch makes all these blue orbs pop out, so you just have to shoot her a bunch, not die in the process, completely fill up these blue orbs, and then use airstrikes to get rid of whatever these are. These are somehow anti-air something, I don't remember, you just have to get rid of them. Problem is, she comes back in waves just for you to fill this bar. And you cannot use it because you need the full bar to use an airstrike. And in between each wave, regular enemies are attacking you, and you would like to use your abilities to save yourself, but you can't. I have no idea what they were thinking when they designed that. Don't forget how poorly designed this battle is. I'll come back to it. In fact, Bodycount loves using poor design decisions to irritate the fuck out of the player. At one point, the antagonist reveals to you that there is a chip in your body releasing poison. How it got there? No one knows. They never explain it. It's just there. You have to deactivate it. So for the whole following level, you just get stunned during the middle of combat. Randomly. The effect is that you drop your gun as everyone's shooting at you, die, and have to restart from checkpoint. Bullshit. Why is this in the game? Imagine if Call of Duty randomly flashbanged you every 30 seconds. That would be the same effect. The last ability you get is basically a fuck off ability that kills everyone around you. Not much more to be said about that. You fill up your bar, you press the fuck off button, and everybody dies. The last half saving grace this game gives you are the high-tech weapons you can use for yourself. They're hilariously overpowered. They also don't fit in with the other weapons and just look ugly. They're blocks. Like, again, there really shouldn't have been any of this sci-fi nonsense. It does not help the game. But yeah, once you unlock these weapons, you just won't use anything else aside from maybe the LMG, but they're clearly the best guns in the game. This high-tech assault rifle does way more damage, has a deep magazine, and is accurate. The other weapon, the shotgun, is actually a high-tech grenade launcher, and you get plenty of ammo for it, so you have no reason to not use it. Unfortunately, since you're getting closer to the end of the game, starting at about halfway through, they almost exclusively shove these high-tech enemies at you that also have these weapons. So it doesn't help much. In fact, it becomes more a necessity. This game, again, has terrible difficulty spikes. And that leads me to the final boss, which is one of the worst final bosses I've ever seen. Big Bitch Lady is back, and it's more or less the same thing. This time you shoot her, you fill up the bar enough, you press the fuck off button, and then you start getting airstriked. The game puts a nav marker on the SAM turrets, so I automatically assumed I'm supposed to be using these airstrikes to attack the SAM turrets. I did this for quite a while, and nothing changed every time. In fact, every time I died, I had to restart the boss battle all over again, which is annoying in its own right. Eventually, I figured out that while I'm getting bombarded, I'm supposed to run behind the SAM turret, press X on this small prompt, and then it shoots at the big bitch lady. You could have explained that so much better. Anyway, you do this like 3 times, and then she dies, and the game just abruptly ends. So there's Bodycount. It's not even mediocre, it's just bad. And it's really disappointing that we never got a true sequel or anything to follow up after Black. Bodycount is so uninteresting that I'd rather talk about anything else at this point, So I think I'll end the video here. The final conclusion is go play Black instead, and pretend the body count simply does not exist. Of course, I want to thank everyone that watched me suffer over on Twitch. My Twitch is twitch.tv/JerickForGamingDragon. If you subscribe, you get to see my videos ahead of time. Big thanks goes to my sponsor as well, Skillshare. Check that link down below in the video information. And of course, thank all of you for watching this video.